I must thank Mr. Samuel Prada for playing the anthem, Judicial Anthem. It was not meant to be a judicial anthem. It may be of interest to you that how did I write this? The former Chief Justice of Supreme Court, Mr. Chaudhry, he asked me to write his speech for the 50th anniversary of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and we were to go to Islamabad next morning. I sat down on my desk that evening to write the speech, but I couldn't write. The whole night I couldn't sleep, and I ended up writing this poem, Justice for All. And next morning when Mr. Chaudhry asked me, have you completed this? I said, no sir, I have landed in writing this. And he was so excited over reading this poem that he said, this is going to be our judicial anthem. So I must compliment him for making it an anthem, and then it was brought to the full court, and they decided that it would be a judicial anthem. I must acknowledge the presence of Mr. Justice Mansoor Ali Shah. In fact, one of the reasons of my coming to this place was that he is going to preside the function, who is one of the most dynamic, liberal and progressive judges of the Supreme Court. Time and again in his judgments, he has reiterated the constitutional values of our Constitution, because it is only this way that we can protect the rights of all if we live by those values. In a recent judgment, he said, and I quote, "The constitutional values enshrined in the preamble, freedom, equality, social justice, and respect of our minorities, and make adequate provisions for them to freely profess and practice their religion and develop their cultures and to safeguard their legitimate interests. All fundamental rights under the Constitution, including the equality of status, freedom of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship, subject to law, and public morality. The Constitution emphasizes that only when we honor these values, we, the people of Pakistan, prosper and attain the rightful and honored place in the comity among nations." These observations remind me of my judgment on minority rights, of which reference was made to by Mr. Samuel Prada and Mr. Bakar Najfi. While hearing the case and answering the judgment, the court was conscious that religion in the public sphere has many a times led to societal conflicts. A country where the national literacy rate is rather modest, where some are afflicted with religious illiteracy, and where absence of ijtihad leads to a myopic view of religious tenets, it is vulnerable to extremism, which generates pressures and an atmosphere of fear. Our judicial system at times in this context is not free from such pressures which cannot be attributed to politicians. One of the biggest threats to judiciary's freedom in this religious orthodoxy. In such a socio-political milieu, the courts, and especially the Supreme Court, have an onerous duty to protect the constitutional rights of vulnerable groups, but particularly the minorities. The courts have to play a more proactive role for the enforcement of human rights, the rule of law, and religious freedom. The court has to act as a pedagogical institution to educate the people about the Constitution and its seminal values. It was this perception which persuaded me to take the only suo motu notice I took during my tenure as Chief Justice of Pakistan. And that was the Peshawar church blast case, wherein 81 Christians died when they were offering prayers. During proceedings, I also took notice of newspaper report that the Kalash tribe and Ismailis in Chitral were being questioned to convert to a different sect within Islam or face death. The court was conscious of three things when authoring the judgment. Number one, that it has to dislodge the misperceptions of religious right about our faith and give a counter and enlightened version. Number two, that it has to dilate on the import of fundamental right of religious freedom and belief given in the Constitution, as also in the role of the Supreme Court in a democracy. And thirdly, the state functionaries have to be reminded and sensitized about their duties in the enforcement of fundamental rights. The detailed judgment gave 8 directions to the states, which included changing curriculum of school and universities, banning hate speeches, creation of special force to protect the places of worship of minorities, and establishment of a National Council on Minority Rights. To ensure implementation, a 3-member bench of the Supreme Court was created. It gives me immense pleasure to note that the said bench is still seized of this matter, because the implementation of the judgment requires a continuous mandamus. I must acknowledge the efforts made by Mr. Shoaib Sadl, the head of the one-man commission, in ensuring the implementation of the judgment. However, the latest report of the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan strikes a rather discordant note, as it has identified specific instances of minorities facing persecution, marginalization, forced conversions, and misuse of blasphemy laws. Just this Saturday, the police saved a man and his son in Sargodha from an enraged mob that wanted to lynch him. The mob also tried to forcibly enter and vandalize homes of some other members of the minority community over claims of desecrating Holy Quran. During such tumultuous time, the inspirational commands embodied in Surah Al-Ma'idah, that whoever takes life unless a punishment for murder or mischief in the land, be kills humanity, and whoever saves life, it will be as if they saved humanity. Then Al-Surah Baqarah, there is no compulsion in religion. These surahs have to be heeded to. There is yet another societal dimension of our behavior, in which should be a matter of concern for all of us. There are pressures on the justice system that cannot be attributed to politicians. Perhaps the biggest threat to the judiciary's independence comes from religious orthodoxy. The plight of all those who are accused of blasphemy is no secret. They cannot find lawyers to defend them. The fees demanded by lawyers who might agree to accept their brief are beyond their means. The courts, hearings, cases are nearly always besieged by mob. During court hearings, the courts are besieged by mobs who threaten judges and lawyers both. Perhaps the founder of the country, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, was conscious of this emotive nature of our people and that they could be exploited in the name of religion to allay this fear and apprehension of minorities. In his first address to the Constituent Assembly, he said what has just been read by Mr. Justice Baqir Najfi. In Pakistan, although Islam is the state religion, yet the people in the very preamble of the Constitution have committed themselves to create a state, and I quote, wherein the principles of democracy, freedom, equality, tolerance, and social justice, as enunciated by Islam, are fully observed. Combined with these constitutional principles enshrined in the very preamble and the words of the Qaid, some of the judgments of the superior courts have struck a responsive chord and have given hope to the vulnerable groups and minorities in Pakistan to work for the creation of a society where Constitution and its abiding values reign supreme. As long as this hope and struggle remains alive, the struggle for democracy shall not fail, because, as Learned Hand said, and I quote, liberty lies in the hearts of men and women. When it dies, no constitution, no law, and no court can save it. Thank you.